In this video, you will discover the 5 tools on what to do if you are feeling anxious in love. Hi, I'm Antia, founder and creator of the Magnetize Your Man Method. And stay till the end of this video because I have some juicy bonuses and surprises for you that will help you out a ton with this. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Tool number 5 is allow space. Okay, hold on a second. What do I mean by that? Now, if you are feeling anxious in love, what oftentimes happens is this. It's a very aggravated feeling and it feels really tight. Your system starts to tighten, right? Because it goes into fight or flight. So if you bring in space, right? So you could visualize space, right? So you could visualize space inside of yourself. Also, breathing helps tremendously to create space, right? Like, right? Like I can't breathe and create space and feel anxious at the same time because that aggravation, that nervous aggravation naturally slows down as you increase the space and with that decrease the pressure inside of yourself, right? So it's really important. Also allow it space to move, right? So oftentimes what happens is we're actually getting into our head when we become anxious in love, right? And this is the worst place to be. One thing my husband and I always say, go into your head, you're dead. Go into your heart, you're smart. Okay, and so now what you want to do instead is actually allow it to move, right? So maybe you cry, maybe you move your body in ways that you normally don't move it. Maybe you roll on the floor, maybe you jump and you freak out, whatever it is, but allow anxiety to actually move through your system and try to do that without story and without pictures. Now, why is that? Because if you bring in stories and pictures, right, then you actually perpetuate the pattern. You feed the cycle, right? You feed the unconscious. But if you remove the story, if you remove the pictures, now you're simply focusing on the essence of the emotion, right? You're just focusing on the emotion itself, the physical, the energetic, the emotional access of that, and no longer the whole story around it. Tool number 4, when you feel anxious in love, is ground. Okay, hold on. Why do I say that? Now, what happens here is when you feel anxious, anxiety is an upward moving energy, right? So that's why, women can become sort of quote unquote hysterical, right? So the energy is moving up and you have little to no control over it. It starts to almost dissipate and it becomes sort of like this wildfire, right? Now also, like I said already in tool number 5, it goes into your head. So you go back into analysis paralysis. Not really helpful at all. You drive yourself nuts. But if you ground, you mean you're sending the energy, right? So if you visualize your energy going down, right? So now also your anxiety is actually being more grounded, right? So you visualize actually roots going into the ground. You can also visualize your feet weighing 1,000 pounds. And again, the energy is not moving so much upwards, right? But now it's being balanced by also moving downwards. Now that does 2 things. For one, again, it calms the system down because it also communicates to the system unconsciously that you have a lot of resources. Now, what happens is when we go into anxiety, we have this belief that we don't have resources, right? That we are at the odds of whatever happens around us, and there's the learned helplessness that comes with that, the lack of self-confidence that goes with that. However, when you ground it down, now you're telling your unconscious, yeah, you actually have the resources, right? You have such a deep roots inside of yourself, right? Below yourself, that no matter how strong the wind is, so to say, the storm, right? You can certainly weather it. Now that also calms and cools down your nervous system and your fight or flight response. Tool number 3, a little bit more practical, is actually create certainty in other areas of your life. Okay, so what does that mean? So what happens is when you are anxious, right, it's oftentimes you have this fear of the unknown, of the uncertainty, lack of control, lack of power. However, when you create certainty in areas of your life that you can control, right, now what happens is you start to feel a little bit more powerful, you start to feel a little bit more resourceful, you start to feel a little bit more in control. control. So let's say you feel anxious in love, right? So what you can do instead is, okay, like I feel anxious in love, so I have no certainty in love, but hey, maybe I have certainty in health, right? Maybe I remind myself how healthy I am, right? Maybe I'll have a gratitude list that I can actually see. So you want to write it out, you want to externalize it so you can look at it, right? So you like, I can rely on that something good is happening every single day, right? Or maybe you want to actually count the friends that you have in your life, the social circles that are supporting you. Maybe you're very successful in business. Now, here you have to be a little bit careful, because what we don't want this to become a coping mechanism. What I see so many single successful women do is they actually use their job to simply distract from the insecurity and the anxiety that they feel in dating. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if that happens like in the moment, and use it as one of the tools to remember that you have strength. Because if you're more in the category of women who are like using work to distract yourselves, then I highly recommend more tools 5 and 4, right? You rather like just really feel the emotion, right? Like versus you're running away from the emotion, actually leaning into the emotion, leaning into the physical expression of that. Tool number 2 on how to deal with anxiety and love is become self-focused. What happens here is oftentimes women who are very anxious, they're also other focused. Yes, they actually derive their sense of self, their sense of confidence through other people and their approval. Now, that was certainly true for me, right? Like I would be constantly anxious. I didn't know if I would please everyone, if everyone is happy, if everything is managed the way it should be, if people approve of me, right? But of course, that caused even more anxiety, because what happens is, we can't control other people. We can't control their experiences. If they have a bad day and they decide to project it onto you, there's not much you can do, right? But here's what you can do. You can become self-focused. Right? So what we see with a really securely attachment style, right? So somebody who feels like less anxiety in their system on a regular basis is a level of self-focusedness, right? So they're really resting and grounding inside of themselves, and they know that they have the resources inside of themselves to recover from rejections, meaning they don't get the approval from the outside world, or to recover from disappointment, right? So they get to feel like, okay, something didn't quite work out the way I thought it would, right? The way I predicted it. They have abilities to bounce back from that, right? So become self-focused versus other-focused. And lastly, tool number 1, one of my favorites, is write trust on pieces of paper. Here is a personal private story from me, because it was like 2009, so that was 11 years ago. I met this guy online. Now, you all know how this goes, right? You meet this guy online and you decide he is the one, right? Oh, he would tell me such great stories, and he hopes that I descend into my dreams, and I love the language he used, right? And he lived in Chicago and I lived in LA, and so we were just talking on the phone, right? And so what ended up happening, of course, the inevitable ended up happening, right? So he was just sort of like dangling the carrot in front of my nose, and he was like saying, hey, I'm gonna come for a visit and it's gonna be fun. And of course, eventually, wouldn't you know it, he decided not to come. Now, he decided not to come to LA because he didn't want to fall in love with me and then be disappointed that he had to climb back in the airplane to fly back, right? Now, whether that's true or not, now looking back, I think it was more he was an avoidant attachment styles, because those avoidant attachment styles, they make actually a lot of promises, leave you hanging high and dry. Now, that was the case here. Now, what did I do with this? Like, I felt the highest level of anxiety I felt in my entire life. You guys, I could not even get out of bed. I tried to talk to my mom on the phone for 5 minutes, right? And then I had to hang up the phone because my anxiety was through the roof, right? So I said, okay, now the good thing about this was, And if you're in my program, you know that I start to read more from my journals back then in the day, right? Was that I was coaching myself. I was giving myself pep talks. I was going to a lot of workshops and seminars, watching videos just like the way you're doing it right now. So I said, okay, hold on a second. What is the key emotion that's missing here, right? I'm so, I feel like I'm this black hole. I'm the only one on this planet, right? I feel so alone, so isolated, right? So helpless. Okay, so what is that? And what came to me was trust. Trust. As a matter of fact, I was joking, if I would ever get a tattoo in my entire life, the only tattoo that I would ever get that I think would be relevant for my entire life would be trust. Trusting myself, trusting other people that they follow through, that I can rely on them. And also, trusting God, trust in the universe, trusting in a higher power. So now what did I end up doing? Now I tend to be a little bit more of a intense personality. Okay. So if you have like unusual circumstances, you got to meet them with unusual tools, right? So I wrote, I trust, right? Like 133 times. I actually have a whole page to prove that as well, 133 times. And then on top of that, I actually ripped out like huge pieces of paper and I just wrote down like trust, right? And then I would actually put those pieces of paper on my wall. So I would be literally surrounded by it. And I kid you not, doing this exercise shifted everything for me. Because when I realized, wow, I trust, right? Like my anxiety started to calm down. If you like this video, here is what's next. Number 1, like, subscribe, and share this video. And of course, leave me a comment, like what inspired you about this video. Number 2, watch our free playlist course on how to attract a loving long-term relationship for you. And finally, number 3, take my personalized Magnetize Your Man quiz at magnetizeyourman.com or simply click that link below. Ladies, I so enjoyed filming this video. I hope you did too. Lots of love. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.